connecting to the server. Okay. Hey, thanks for everybody for showing up for our week 4 huddle. We miss Wes, it has to be said. Hopefully he'll join us in a little bit if he can. I'm going to start sharing my screen with you. Okay. So, can somebody just unmute? How about Kevin, and just tell me if you see my screen now?
I see your screen.
Thanks. Great. Okay. So, I want to take a look at a couple of things today. First, I want to talk about plagiarism because now we're really getting into writing and research, and that's what's coming up. This week you're going to be finish up your rhetorical ads. You're going to be writing that in paper format. And then we're going to start moving into research next week. So the first thing we're going to talk about a little bit is plagiarism. I think I want to go back one. Let me just get out of here for a minute. I want to go back to this because there was some kind of surprising statistics. Almost 85% of college students said cheating was necessary to get ahead, and 84% of them admitted to cheating on written assignments. An assignment, I think students forget, isn't only what you submit at the end of the week, but it also can happen in discussions. That's part of your grade, and we have had, unfortunately, in one of the classes, we've had an incident where students were copying each other's posts, which is, not something that you ever want to do, but that has happened historically in the past from time to time. We want to make sure that you're putting out your own information. 52% of college students had said they'd copied a few sentences from a website without citing the source. So whether you're copying from each other or copying from your research, you really have to take the time to note where you're getting that research from. And I think the greatest question that students ask me is, well, I knew nothing about this topic going into it, so do I have to cite every line? And the answer to that is, of course not. It's not, writing a research-based paper is not about taking research and just putting a citation on every paragraph or every sentence. It's about you absorbing that information and being able to write about it in a collegiate way so that it shows that you understood the material. I always say you're reading about a topic, you're looking at data, you're thinking about things that the people who are experts in the field say, and then you sit down and you put that all away, and you sit down and you write that paper without looking at your notes. Any of that information is yours because you've retained it. But when you pick up the papers and you look directly at those notes, that's when you have to be citing your sources. So do we have any questions so far?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Now, I learned this in a couple of other English classes over time, but, one of the professors had said that no matter what you're putting on paper, somebody else has probably already said it once before.
Sure.
Because even though that you're going to study this material and you're going to go back and you're going to put everything off to the side, as you're stating everything, there's no way that you're not going to say something that somebody hasn't already said.
True, but then we could probably with that same idea, every time we recite the alphabet, do we give props to our first grade teacher? No, we just move on and we assume we know that. So you're becoming an expert on that material. Let's just take the advertisements that you're working on this week. You probably took an ad that you were unfamiliar with. A lot of people did go back and take vintage ads. I know the one that I used of Ronald Reagan. I had no idea it existed before. I can't even recall what cigarette it was, so I would have to go back and look at it. But you're becoming experts on that particular ad. And when you go down and you're going to write this paper, and you sit down to write it, you should be doing it without your notes. And that skeleton of the paper is really all you've learned. And of course, there are going to be things that you say that other people have said before, but probably not in the same order in which you say them, not with the same structure, and not with the same style. that make sense?
It does.
Okay. We're going to look at a couple of different types of plagiarism. Before I started to do this, this is actually a PowerPoint I worked on when I was getting a degree with DeVry, and I have a Master's of Science in Educational Technology. And we were looking at putting together, developing a way to secure your data. And we looked at types of plagiarism as a component of this. So there were 5 types. There are actually more. There's mosaic, which we're not going to talk about, or we'll talk about briefly. But there are 5 general types, and I think you know the first one, the copy and paste. That's where you, word for word, you're using Control-C and Control-V. You are copying it, you are pasting it directly into your paper. Now you might say, are people really doing this anymore? Yes, they are. I see it in discussion boards, and I see it in papers. Do they know that there is Turnitin and that it checks your papers, which, by the way, this week Turnitin is on? Maybe, but I think that if they're crunched for time, they'd rather hand in something versus nothing and hope that you don't notice, I guess. So there's that type of cut and paste plagiarism. Then there's the word switch. We're going to look at these at a little more in depth momentarily. This is where your original sources, you're taking the original source's sentence and you're changing a couple of words in it. Okay, now it's mine, because as Kevin said before, right? Everyone's said some line somewhere. So if I change a couple of things on this quote that I want to use, it's mine now. Not so. And then there's style plagiarism, where you're following a source article sentence by sentence or paragraph by paragraph. This one was fun. I was actually doing this one today in preparation for the slideshow. And it's really easy to do. Like, you don't have to do anything at all. You can just copy what somebody says, and as you're going along sentence by sentence, put in your own words as you go. This, again, is a type of plagiarism. There's metaphorical plagiarism. I don't see this one that much. It's using original metaphors or analogies from the source article and claiming that they're your own, and I'll give you an example of that in a little bit. And then there's the complete idea plagiarism, using a solution or an observation of somebody else's and saying, oh, that was my observation. So those are the types. How do you know when you're plagiarizing? Because usually when you're plagiarizing, you know that that's what you're doing. I mean, you know it. You may hope that I don't know it, but you would know that you're doing it. Any questions on these so far? Okay, so let's look at word switch plagiarism. I'm not going to do cut and paste because that one I think you know. So we're going to go to word switch plagiarism. And if you look at the first sentence, the first paragraph, it says, Camel cigarettes, the most trusted brands by doctors nationwide. The 50s ad is full of information that appeals heavily on the logical side of those who want to smoke. It attempts to persuade both women and men, as well as makes an attempt to ensure all loyal customers stay loyal. It appeals to logic and emotion while coming from a trusted source. Now look at the plagiarized source. Camel cigarettes, the most trusted brand by doctors and other people nationwide. This 1950s ad appeals to people's logic. One can easily be influenced by the ad. The ad was put together by an advertising firm that was well known in the industry. They knew how to make customers stay loyal by appealing to their logic and emotions. So you see, they took some of the words from it. They threw in a sentence that, you know, wasn't there just to make it appear as if it's their own. But if you look at it, they're just switching words around in the plagiarized source. Style plagiarism, this is the one that I said I had fun with. Camel cigarettes, the most trusted brands by doctors nationwide. And look here, Camel cigarettes has been around since the 1950s. This 50s ad is full of information that appeals heavily to the logical side. It is a brand that many doctors trusted. The ad makes people think about how normal it is to smoke and attempts to get customers, both male and female, to keep buying them. It uses reason and emotion. So you just go line by line and you say, okay, what does this line say? Okay, I'll say it here, or I'll say it in the next line. 1950s, it mentions the 50s. I'll mention it here too. It makes work really simple, but again, it's just plagiarizing. You're not internalizing any of this. In fact, if I stopped showing you this and I said, write me 3 sentences on the camel ad, even though you haven't seen it, you probably would remember a couple of things, but you certainly wouldn't put it in this way. It would look nothing like either the original or the plagiarized source. It would look like your source with your style. Metaphor plagiarism, again, is the one that I don't see too often, but if you look at the original excerpt, his raging soul screamed for vengeance while his deathly calm voice rumbled with a lion's growl just before the attack. And the metaphor is, his voice bellowed with a lion's growl. Where did we see that before? Oh, it's right up here. Because he was screaming for vengeance. Oh, his soul screamed for vengeance. Deep within his raging soul. Didn't we see raging soul up there? Oh, here it is. So, you're taking this metaphor of this raging soul that's screaming for vengeance, and you're just moving the words around and taking the metaphor on as your own. Idea plagiarism is a little bit more sophisticated, but you take this idea. When those millions of people tuned in hoping to witness the moonwalk, not Michael Jackson's, one thing they wouldn't see, or at least might not catch a glimpse of, were the non-astronauts, those behind the glare of the limelight. The regular folks whose efforts made it impossible mission possible in the first place. And then if you look at the plagiarism, when most people think about Apollo 11, the first time the United States sent a man to the moon, most think of the 3 astronauts on the mission, but in fact there were 400,000 people who helped men walk on the moon, scientists, builders, engineers, doctors, etc. And they even show you how to correct it. When most people think about Apollo 11, the first time the United States sent a man to the moon, most think of the 3 astronauts on the mission. In her book, Team Moon, How 400,000 People Landed Apollo 11 on the Moon, Catherine Thimish explains how many people were actually involved in making the mission a success. So, yeah, are they almost plagiarizing here? Yes, until you get to this point where they say, oh, this wasn't my idea. This was Catherine Thimish's idea. So any questions on that? One of the things I wanted to show you, and it's very, very quick, and I use it when I have to do a quick citation, like in a discussion board, is I use Citation Machine. You could use BibMe, you could use Citation Machine. There's a whole bunch of them out there. But if you want to use something very quick, we'll talk about Noodle tools later on. You can create citations right from here. So if you're quoting something in your discussions and you have to cite it, and you're not sure how, you just want to slap a URL on it, why don't you just go here, choose APA. I'm sorry this lags a little bit when I go on the internet. And then, if you're at a website and you want to cite that website, as soon as you post it, the URL here, it will automatically fill in everything for you. I don't have an example of that, but it will fill in everything. It will search the website. You'll choose the one that you want, and then it will format it for you. And that's an easy way to avoid plagiarizing at all. Especially in your discussions. Could you use this for your papers? Yeah. It may take you a little while to get accustomed to using this kind of interface, but it's free and it's simple, so it's worth looking at. Any questions on this? Okay, the next thing I wanted to do is I wanted to take a look at a sample paper with you. Whoop, did somebody come in or leave? Oh, hi, Sharissa. Okay. So I have a sample here that I'll be sending out to the class, but in the meantime, I want to take a look at it with you. And then I'm going to ask you to grade it using the rubric that we have for the week. So if you can grab a pen and a piece of paper or some scratch paper, anything that's nearby, that would be great. And I guess it's worth looking first at your rubric. If you haven't been doing this every week, make sure that you do. I know I cut and paste them into your grades, but it's a good idea to look at the rubric before you write your paper. Or at least, if you want to write your paper first, match it up against the rubric to see how many points you would give yourself. So this week's rubric is going to have your paper graded in 4 ways: purpose and audience, how well you support and develop, the organization, and the style and mechanics. Now be really impressive. Somebody on this call must know how long, how many pages is this next assignment that you're doing?
I believe it's 3 double-spaced pages of the essay itself.
Anyone else? Kevin's the only one that looked at this? All right. Let's have a look together, just to be sure, especially since I'm filming this and recording this. I want the whole class to know completely where to find these things. So bear with me as I load DeVry up. I thought it was already on my screen, but it turns out it's not. I like those pretty pictures. Okay. So that's one thing that, it doesn't say right out that you should write 2 to 3 pages of the rubric, which I think is something you should understand implicitly, that if it doesn't meet those page requirements, you're going to lose points in the development of the essay. So that's where we would take off points for that. So let's see. 3 to 4 double-spaced pages, not including a title page. So some students get confused. Does that mean I don't use a title page, or does that mean I don't include it in the 3 to 4 pages? And that's what it means. You have to include a title page, but it shouldn't be in the 3 to 4 double-spaced pages. So you're focusing on the advertisement that you chose, making sure it's appropriate for a college-level audience. You include a thesis statement. This is something I'm going to be looking for in your introduction. We talked about that 2 weeks ago, where you find the thesis and the 2 questions that it answers. Anyone remember those? When you write a thesis, you should be answering 2 questions to yourself.
So what, and who cares?
Yep. What is it I'm stating, and why should anybody be reading this? What's new? What's a new angle? You want to include details to establish the visual description and context of the ad, and identify the way in which various rhetorical appeals were used. Now, if you look at this so far, you did this last week in your outline. So a lot of this is done already. You just have to kind of turn it into a formal essay. And make sure to go back to last week's discussion where we talked about the differences. I posted a chart on the differences between informal and formal writing. So it's going to be typed and submitted as a Microsoft Word document, 12-point font, and include an APA cover page. So that's where the cover page was. But again, it's got to be 3 double-spaced pages of text. So you look at that, and then you look back here. You say, okay, I have to establish a purpose and audience. The writer has chosen a current or vintage ad for analysis that's appropriate for a college-level audience. I think you all did that. You had great variety of ads, too. And then the writer provides details and descriptions to introduce the ad visually and identifies the rhetorical strategies. You were doing that in your assignment for last week and in the discussion. So feel free to go back And, you're not plagiarizing yourself. Feel free to go back and take some of that stuff that you wrote because it was really good. Some of it was like a page long, some people's analysis. So feel free to go back and look at that and take some of those details and put them into your essay. And then the organization. The introduction grabs the reader's attention, introduces the subject, and clearly conveys the overall purpose, the so what and the who cares. And the body paragraphs work to support the essay's purpose with appropriate content. And style and mechanics, well, that's where you get things like, how many run-ons do you have? Do you have fragmented sentences? Is punctuation missing? Do you use arbitrary capitalization? And that's worth 20 points out of the 100. So the heaviest weight goes to the purpose and audience, followed by support and organization, and then your style and mechanics. So this is fairly evenly weighed. Do any of you have questions on the rubric itself and what it's asking you to do? Okay, so then let's move on to our, what I call autopsy. So here's where I want you to think about those 4 things again, and I'll shoot them back up here for you. Purpose and audience. If you have a piece of paper or scratch pad or something, you can write that down. Purpose and audience, 30 points. Support and development was 25. Organizations, 25. And style and mechanics is 20. I'm going to ask you to, as we go through this paper, to start just thinking about how many points you would give to the author for each of these sections. So here it is. There is no cover page. It just starts right here. Camel cigarettes, the most trusted brand by doctors nationwide. That's the first sentence. Think about, is that a hook? Is it even a complete sentence? This 50s ad is full of information that appeals heavily to the logical side of those who want to smoke. It attempts to persuade both women and men, as well as makes an attempt to ensure all loyal customers stay loyal. It appeals to logic and emotion, coming from a trusted source. What should this be right down here? What part of the essay is this last line?
That should be the thesis.
Okay. So far as an introduction, how does it resonate with you? How about Summer? What do you think?
I think it could definitely be a little more catchy, and instead of, be a little bit more in detail to get us going into the body paragraphs.
Good. Jessica, what do you think about the thesis? It appeals to logic and emotion while coming from a trusted source.
It's not long enough.
You feel like something's missing.
Yeah, something's missing out of it. I don't know. It doesn't really...
Well, it answers the so what.
Yeah, but who cares?
Right. There's that part. I think that's great that you're starting to identify, wait, something's missing here. Why should I care about it? I haven't even seen the ad, and maybe I don't even care to do so. Kevin, do you want to say anything about this introduction?
Well, I think you could have done a lot better of a job in the thesis and other places of identifying the ad itself, trying to give more detail about the ad so it kind of catches the interest of the person that's going to read this paper. I mean, who really cares about, this? All you know is it's a camel ad from the 50s. It doesn't really describe the ad itself.
In fact, it's not really very much of a hook, is it, up here? It doesn't really grab you.
No.
It's kind of interesting when I ruminate about it and I go, wait, the doctors trust the ad? Trust cigarettes? That's kind of strange. But, okay, let's move on. I mean, he probably should have played that up because I don't even know what that means. Were doctors at one point prescribing cigarettes? Like, reduce your stress. Here, have a cigarette. I don't know.
Maybe there was a doctor's picture on the cover of the ad.
It could have been, right. In the 1950s and 1960s, the medical effects of tobacco were not yet understood. That's a very strong topic sentence. I like that because it really lays the groundwork for this paragraph, or at least it should. Long-term studies had not been conducted, and smoking was widely accepted by society. It was the goal of large tobacco companies to capture and maintain as much market share as they could. These same companies were later found negligent for misleading their consumers in the 1990s through false and misleading advertising ads and suppressing medical issues that showed the long-term effects of smoking. What do you think of the paragraph?
He's quoting somebody.
It would seem that way, right?
Yes.
I could tell you just from living through it that in the 90s I remember there being a lawsuit, but I don't remember it. I don't remember the result of it. I think the branding, you had to say that it could cause certain effects, but I don't know if I could put this together. Obviously he's looking at something. I wouldn't call it plagiarism right yet, but I would say he's walking that line, between what you know and what you've learned from reading this, and maybe putting a quote in there or citing the source would even show how serious you were about the paper, that, not only do I know this, but somebody agrees with me. That's the whole purpose of quoting, to show that it's not just your idea. Now, a student in one of the classes asked a very good question this week, and the question I'm paraphrasing here was kind of like, where do you put your experience with a topic in the paper? So is it okay if in the middle of this you go, I should know because I was a smoker for 20 years, and as a result I have emphysema and COPD? The short answer to that is no. That does not belong in a research-based essay. If I had asked you to write or an analysis, I can't say that, an analysis. Okay, there we go. The analysis should focus solely on what you're taking out, and this student is doing that, but the deduction and induction and the reasoning, and he's trying to structure this essay based on what he saw and what he perceives, and obviously a little bit about what he researched in that ad. There was no room in an essay of this type for your experiences with smoking. Go ahead, Kevin.
Professor, just a quick question. When you get all the way down to the bottom of your paper and you're writing your conclusion,
yeah,
at that point, that's your personal thoughts on your conclusion, correct? So could you,
at that
period, put some portion of an experience level into that?
I'm so glad you asked that. No, I think that's wrong. The conclusion does two things. If you remember, that's where we took that triangle and we right-sided it, and we said, okay, you have to restate your thesis because that was the point of that pyramid, and then you have to broaden it out. There should never be new information introduced in a conclusion. I'll say that again. There should never be new information in a conclusion. Your conclusion is just kind of tying things up and saying, this is where we've been. This is what my paper talked about. Now, if I had asked you, Kevin, could you write a personal essay of your experiences with cigarettes, totally different type of writing.
Right.
That would have to be in first person because I asked you your personal experience.
Correct.
This, I'm asking you to evaluate an ad. That was the assignment, was to evaluate this ad for pathos, logos, and ethos. Nowhere did it say, and tell us about your experiences with this product. And, if you look at it, let's just scroll back to the first paragraph, right? He says, this ad attempts to persuade both men and women, as well as make an attempt to ensure all loyal customers stay loyal. I don't know that that's true. That's really this student's opinion of what he sees, right? The whole essay is his opinion. He doesn't have to say, I think. Putting an I think here, and a lot of students do this. Well, not all in caps, but they do this. I think. Notice how it takes away the force of what he was saying. I think it attempts to persuade. Like, I'm not sure, I think so. Right? Or in my opinion. The whole thing is your opinion. Comments? Questions? Then we get into this. We have a little list here, and he says pathos. The ad appeals to a man's work ethic. Many men like to think they have a hard work ethic, and this is a trait by which they self-identify themselves. He's one of the busiest men in town, and he's seemingly quoting from the ad. What do you think about this?
He's not. If he's using that as a quote from somewhere, it's coming from the article, but shouldn't he cite that though? Because he's pulling it from that.
Well,
ad?
I think it's coming from the ad, right? But this is all he had to say about pathos. That's it. 2 sentences. Right? It's very underdeveloped. Many men like to think they have a hard. What happened to the women? Didn't he say it appeals to men and women in his introduction? Where was that in the pathos? Then we have what he calls Lagos and ethos. And I'm asking myself, what is Lagos? Isn't that a country in Africa? I'm not kidding. I really think it is. Okay, so we have a misspelling here, and you might say, "Oh, she's being picky." But come on, this was like one of the 3 things they asked her to do, and they wrote it in the introduction. We've been talking about it for 2 weeks. Logos, Logos. But I'm not sure why he put it with ethos. So let's read on. This is interesting, as it appears to have both an appeal to credibility, the scientist, and emotion, friendly, sympathetic human being. The doctor is a scientist, a diplomat, and a friendly, sympathetic human being all in one. And again, I think this goes back to what Jessica said. Where is he getting this? If I'm reading this as a paper and I'm not looking at the ad, where is this coming from? And I'm not sure why he put the emotion, the friendly, sympathetic human being. Shouldn't that be pathos? So I'm confused. Then we have logos, numbers, cold hard facts. Logically, a sane person would have to come to the same conclusion as 113,597 doctors. So that was probably in the ad. Doctors in every branch of medicine, he's quoting from the ad again, were queried in the nationwide survey of cigarette preference. Then he goes back to ethos. Then he goes to pathos. Summer, what do you think about the bullet points? Do you like the bulleting in the paper?
I do. I don't understand why he didn't put it together, and I think he should have definitely described the ad more in his introduction, so we have something to follow along with while we're reading about the ethos and the pathos and stuff.
Right, because here I am now. Now I'm going to be tasked with reading 25 essays in one class and another 20 in another. And I don't always go to the ad first. I go to, what are they telling me is happening? Does this read like an essay? And I would argue that this doesn't look very much like an essay. Are you with me?
Right.
I almost think, if I was a betting woman, that he pulled this out of his outline and just plopped it in there, did a cut and paste. Right?
That's what I was going to say. It looks like an outline.
Yeah. It's not forming sentences together for us. It's just kind of
not even a big flow of anything. It just kind of goes all over the place.
Yeah, like we get pathos, we get whatever logos is, and ethos, and then we go to logos, whatever that is, and then ethos again. Now we're back to pathos. I think you're right. The flow isn't there.
Well, and as we're going through this and reading this, I'm trying to picture the ad in my mind, even though and I don't even know what to picture.
I gotcha. It seems, though, that he does have an understanding, wouldn't you agree, of ethos, pathos, and logos. That's coming through, that he understands which one are the numbers or the words or the text, and which one is the credibility and which one is the emotion. It's the way he put it together. So he says, tobacco companies face fines in the billions for these type of ads when they were used by the federal government. Kevin, tell us what's wrong with that.
Well, he dug that information out of someplace because he knows that somebody's being fined billions of dollars for these types of ads.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we could generalize about it and say, I think that they were sued for billions, but I wouldn't know unless I was looking at something that told me that. They knowingly promoted their products while ignoring growing scientific data over the decades that showed the ill effects of their products to the public. Now, that might be him just clearly paraphrasing something he read. Those that do not know history are doomed to repeat it. How many times have you heard this or seen it on Facebook? Right? So you have this really hackneyed expression that you just kind of throw in there. You're like, you know what? I'm kind of out of words. So perhaps social media giants like Facebook and Twitter may soon face similar outcomes as they also knowingly created products that have adverse effects on society. Wait a minute, Kevin. What did I tell you not to do in the conclusion?
Don't introduce new materials and don't put your own.
And what does he do here? Wait a minute. Perhaps social media giants like Facebook and Twitter.
Those were never in there before.
Wow. Is he just kind of ending on a high note there, or?
That's what it looks like.
Facebook and Twitter are not even related to the topic.
It's not even related to. Let's look at the ad. Should we do that? Control and click. There's the ad. Most doctors smoke Camels. More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. So there's the ad. And I can't make it any bigger, but I managed to draw on it somehow. So he didn't even talk about this part, did he? About the females. And he was right. It's appealing to both, but kind of left that out. So if you're going to grade him, I want you to give him a fair grade. First in purpose and audience support, and then I'll scroll down to organization and let you read that. And then I'm going to have you announce your grades. Don't be too mean. All right, Sharissa, are you there?
I am.
Hi. I'm glad you could join us today.
I tried.
So were you able to give this this student a grade?
Yes, I did.
What did
think I was mean. I gave it a 55 out of 100.
What was the grade?
55 out of 100. I gave him 15 for purpose and audience. I gave 15 for support and development. I gave 10 for organization, and I gave 15 for style and mechanics.
Okay, so you got a 55 in all.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to mute you right now and go to Jessica.
Me.
Okay, there you go, Jess.
Do I have to give you the specific ones or just the total?
Just tell us what you gave us as a total. We have a 55 so far.
Yeah, I got about 65.
Okay. Which one scored the highest for you?
It was kind of even.
Okay.
Well, the organization was the lowest one. That was definitely it.
That was definitely low.
The style and mechanics was a little low. The purpose was kind of there, and the support was kind of there.
Right.
It wasn't organized as well, so.
Okay. Good, thanks. I'm going to put you on mute.
Got it.
And I'm going to go to Kevin.
Okay.
What did we give him?
He ended up with a 60.
60. So so far, we're all within 10 points of each other. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Which one did he score the lowest for you?
Style and mechanics.
Okay. Oh, so down at the bottom, this one.
Yes.
The voice of the writer is clear, distinct, and appropriate.
Right.
Okay.
His message, I mean, he didn't come across very well, especially, like with his thesis and things of that sort. He left a lot out to really get the people's attention and things of that sort.
Great. All right. Thanks, Kevin. I'm going to put you on mute there, and I'm going to go to Summer. Last but not least, Summer.
I gave him a 65. His lowest for me was style, and then his next was support. He was all over the place. He didn't have very much detail, and with his style, he was missing punctuation and spelling, and the structure of it was just, as far as with his bullet points, I don't even think it had 3 paragraphs in it.
And it certainly wasn't it wasn't 3 pages either. It was like 2 and then like a couple of sentences on the 3rd page. So they say, and I say they because, these classes are designed by DeVry. I think they're well developed and well designed, and so are the assignments. So when I say they, people go, who? Isn't it you writing? No, I don't write the assignments, but what they're asking for is 3 full pages of text, 3 double-spaced pages, not 2.5. Not 2 in a couple of sentences. So yeah, it's important to get as close to the bottom as possible. And I think that really hurt his development because he as Jessica pointed out, his paragraphs weren't developed. We weren't following them. They were just kind of like, they were almost mosaics. Like I'll leave it there and you could interpret it. So it wasn't very much fun to read. It was a lot of work. But he still, I agree with you that it would be in that kind of D area, if not a complete failure. It would be a high fail to a really low D. So you were all right.
You said don't be mean, so I even gave him more points than what I probably would have.
Right. Because when you take it apart, and that's why I called it an autopsy, when you take it apart and you start looking at the parts that the rubric tells you, here's where you're going to get graded. We need to see a thesis. We need to see development. You need to be descriptive, and we didn't get that. It's pretty clear. It's very rare that I put a 0 in here, but I have done it where I just go, there's none of this. Same thing with mechanics. I very rarely get a paper that it's so bad that I cannot at all intelligently read it. It does happen from time to time, but it's not very often that I would put a 0 here. But his support and development and organization were just totally off. So there were bits and pieces, but you need to thread that together for us. And probably using bullet points, it's probably not the best idea because that's what happens. You just start bullet pointing. So I think what we just saw was somebody who took from their outline, and by the way, this isn't a current student. This is way in the past. I think he just took from his outline and just put it in there, and maybe in the rush to do things, that's what he came up with. Now, do you feel more confident that you can do better than that?
Most definitely.
Good. So, regarding this week's work, we're kind of finished early tonight, which is nice because I always keep you guys way too long because I like hanging out with you. But do you have any questions about any of the assignments or the discussions that are ongoing this week? So we're all good. All right. So thanks for coming tonight. And if you think of anything that I haven't answered, let me know, and I will do my best to get back to you. You know I'm pretty quick that way. And I'll see you in the discussions, and hopefully see you next week.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Take care.
All right. Good night.
Thanks.